Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Itchy, squirmy, scratchy, family not getting clean? Get Charmin Ultra Strong. Go get 'em. It just cleans better. With a diamond weave texture, your family can use less while still getting clean.
Goodbye, itchy squirm.
Hello, cream bottom.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
HBCU League Pass. Watch your favorite black colleges. Some of the best players in the land. HBCU League Pass. It's game time. I'm proud and I love my HBCU. HBCU League Pass. Watch your favorite black colleges. Some of the best players in the land. HBCU League Pass. It's game time. I'm proud and I love my HBCU.
And welcome. New week, new things to talk about. I'm BJ Jones, and you're inside HBCU football. Got a lot of things to talk about tonight. Tonight will be a quick hitter night. Got the inboxes and the emails from you guys, and you guys wanted me to jump right into it. So tonight, no guessing. There won't be any guessing. We're going to go right into what transpired inside of HBCU football this particular weekend. This weekend, week number 6, we had some very interesting ball games on the docket, particularly in the Southwestern Athletic Conference in the SWAC. You had Jackson State visiting Alabama A&M for homecoming. A homecoming that went more like a homegoing, but we'll get into that. You had the Hornets of Alabama State hosting the Golden Lions of Arkansas Pine Bluff. It was homecoming also down at Alabama State University as the Hornets and Golden Lions linked up. First time in the illustrious history of Alabama State University that homecoming and the Turkey Day Classic would be separate from each other. Also, speaking of homecomings, let's stay with that theme. Alcorn State University taking on the G-men of Grambling State University. That happened yesterday. Then in the great state of Texas, Arlington, Texas, the 817. You had Southern University, the Jaguars, taking on Texas Southern University, the Tigers, in Arlington, Texas. We'll jump into that ball game as well. And then our next homecoming took place down on the sandy beaches of Daytona. Bethune-Cookman playing host to Mississippi Valley. So those were our games on the docket in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Where do we start? Well, I think Montgomery, Alabama is a great place to start. We talked about Alabama State, the highs, the lows, the ups and downs. Last week was a low. They went to Tallahassee, lost 28-0 to Florida A&M. Offense was not very impressive in that ball game. It was a game that got away from Alabama State pretty quickly. The question was on homecoming, could the Hornets bounce back? And they were welcoming in Arkansas Pine Bluff, who were coming off of 2 straight conference losses. They had the heartbreaker at when they hosted Alcorn State on that Thursday night game. Remember that ball game? Arkansas Pine Bluff pretty much controlled that ball game in the first half, and then they got away from them in the second half. They lost to Alcorn State. Then the next Thursday, Prairie View kind of just took them behind the woodshed. So they were looking to avoid an 0-3 start in conference play. Well, Alabama State, they get the win, 35-13. And it wasn't the fact that Alabama State got the win, it was the fashion in which they got the win. Arkansas Pine Bluff offensively has been explosive all year long. Not so much on yesterday. Alabama State was able to limit them to just 15 points. 12 of those points for Arkansas Pine Bluff were scored in the fourth quarter. Alabama State looked a lot better offensively. Season high passing, 292 yards for the Hornets as they broke in a new quarterback on yesterday. And it was a true freshman from right here in the Atlanta area, Miles Crawley. That young man yesterday went 20 of 28 for 292 yards, 4 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. He had an outstanding day yesterday. And as he went, so did that Alabama State offense. Alabama State was able to run the ball effectively. They were able to limit what Arkansas Pine Bluff was able to do. Ezra Gray got back into the swing of things. He had 8 carries for 53 yards, most notably a 22-yard run to really set the tone in that ball game. The Hornets look good. They now sit at 3-2, 2-1 in the conference, and it sets up a huge, huge contest in the Eastern Division this weekend. As they'll travel to Jackson State. We'll talk about Jackson State and what they were able to do this weekend a little bit later. But the Hornets, right now sitting at 2-1 in conference. A lot of people in Hornet Nation was down on Coach Donald Hill-Ely in this football team after that narrow escape against Miles College. But then they bounced back and then, get a big win at Bethune-Cookman, against Bethune-Cookman at home, go on the road and take one on the chin to FAMU, and people were back off of the bandwagon. But now they're back on solidly. And if you look at this game by the numbers, Alabama State. Hornets. Alabama State racked up 363 yards of total offense. We talked about the 292 yards through the air. 71 yards on the ground. It was not their best rushing output. Um, One thing is they're going to have to cut down to the penalties. Alabama State was penalized 15 times yesterday for a grand total of 171 yards. But they weren't able to handle Arkansas Pine Bluff. Only one turnover for Alabama State University. They were able to get two turnovers from Arkansas Pine Bluff. Now, Jackson State, who was their next opponent, they go on the road yesterday, and we know about the banter back and forth between the coaches. Really, it wasn't a lot of bantering back and forth. A lot of that stuff was media driven, if we're being honest. But Jackson State going on the road to Alabama State. Going on the road to Alabama A&M, excuse me. And if you remember that ball game from this spring, that ball game was an ESPN game. Jackson State offensively was able to do pretty much whatever they wanted to. Alabama A&M was able to get a few key stops, and Jackson State lost that particular ball game. The question was, coming into this fall, how much different would this ball game go? Akil Glass in that game in the spring, over 400 yards passing. That offense looked unstoppable. Well, on yesterday, we got it. Over 21,000 on hand at Alabama A&M to watch this contest. And Jackson State literally took Alabama A&M behind the woodshed, 61-15. At one point, this game, it got out of hand early. Jackson State was up 20-0 early and never looked back. Alabama A&M did have some momentum on their first drive. Boom, you have a turnover. That turns into a touchdown. And at that point, the Tigers of Jackson State never looked back. At one point, we were talking about this game was 54-7. It just got all out of hand. Defensively, Jackson State is who we thought that they were, which is quite frankly one of the best defenses in the conference. Probably the best defense in the conference. There's an argument to be made between them and Florida A&M, and definitely one of the best defenses in the country. They limited Alabama A&M to 301 total yards, 293 yards passing for Akil Glass. Most of that was a bunch of empty yardage. Only 32 yards on the ground. Only 8 yards on the ground for Alabama A&M on 32 carries. Alabama A&M did not even average a yard per carry. They sacked Akil Glass 11 times on yesterday, which has to be some type of record. And we talk about Jackson State's running game. That's been the anemic part of that offense. They were able to run it yesterday 28 times for 247 yards. Shedeur Sanders went 17-25 for 249 yards. And Jackson State was able to rack up 496 yards of total offense on this Alabama A&M defense. Now, defensively, we know that Alabama A&M is not a stout unit at all. So far this year, Jackson State joined everyone else on this Alabama A&M schedule with their season high in yardage and points once they faced Alabama A&M. If you remember, Bethune-Cookman had their season high in yardage and points against Alabama A&M. South Carolina State, season high, yardage and points against Alabama A&M. Tuskegee, season high, yardage and points against Alabama A&M. And Jackson State followed that trend. If you're a Bulldog fan, you have to lick your wounds and get ready to play, because this weekend you host Florida A&M. The Rattlers come calling. And they also boast a strong defense. You have to hurry up and get this under control quickly. The Bulldogs now sit 1-2 in the conference. This is the spring champion, the champion of the Southwestern Athletic Conference from the spring. They're now sitting at 1-2. They're actually looking up at Jackson State and others in the standings. And now you have FAMU calling. If you're Jackson State, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. 2-0 in the conference. You host Alabama State this weekend for homecoming in Jackson, Mississippi. That's going to be a crucial ball game because Alabama State's defense very solid. Shedeur Sanders in that offense would definitely get a test. Now the question is on the offensive side of the ball for Alabama State, can they move the ball consistently against Jackson State this weekend? So the pressure is going to be all on young quarterback Miles Crawley. Can he protect the football, make enough plays with his arm and his legs to keep that Jackson State defense at bay? I think it's going to be a good contest. We know about everything that happened in the spring between these two with Coach Donald Ely and the picture of Deion Sanders after the game. But the fall is finally here. And now these two are getting ready to link up in the contest that will be, it's very important. If you're Jackson State, you get the opportunity here to go 3-0 in conference and give yourself a little bit of a cushion. If you lose here, now Alabama State is right there where they need to be. And you almost opened up the door if you're Jackson State for a Florida A&M team that you beat when the season started. So that's going to be an interesting contest. Alabama State visiting Jackson State. Also, we just mentioned Florida A&M. They hosted South Carolina State on yesterday. Old BX foes. South Carolina State, it's been a rough season so far for the Bulldogs out of Orangeburg. They're 1-4 on the season. Season has not gone how they've wanted it to go. Their lone win has been against winless Bethune-Cookman. They go down to Tallahassee and they take one on the chin, 30-7. Florida A&M absolutely dominates. Another big day by that Florida A&M defense. They were a few minutes away from pitching another shutout, which would have been 2 consecutive shutouts. And if you look at FAMU, from the FCS division down, they only allowed 7 points per game. This defense is nasty. This is an athletic bunch. We had an opportunity earlier today to talk to head coach Willie Simmons about this defense, and he likes them, and I like them too. Offensively, they're coming around. This is not the explosive Billy Joe Gulf Coast offenses from the past. This offense is efficient enough to get it done and rely on this defense in a nice running game. Bishop Bunnett, 12 carries for 118 yards on yesterday. That young man was getting it done. Rashawn McKay, 14-24 for 181 yards and a touchdown, 0 interceptions, which was key. Florida A&M, 30-7. Now they go on the road to face Alabama A&M up in Huntsville on this Saturday. If Florida A&M wants to stay in the thick of the Eastern Division race, this is a must-win for them. If you're Alabama A&M, if you lose this one, you're pretty much done for. You're not technically out of it, but you're out of it. So this is a must-win for both of those programs. Moving on along, Mississippi Valley. We talked about how close Mississippi Valley had been in that ball game against Southern a couple of weeks ago, two weeks ago to the day. Mississippi Valley really played well towards the end of that particular football game. But since then, since we last talked, Mississippi Valley defeated North Carolina Central a week ago. Now they go down to Daytona Beach to face off against the Bethune-Cookman football team, who is winless on the year. They've had some close calls, but they are winless. Coulda, woulda, shoulda against Alabama A&M. They had a amazing comeback against South Carolina State on last Saturday. They fell a little bit short. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. But yesterday, Mississippi Valley scores 13 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to defeat Bethune-Cookman. And that gives Valley their second win in a row. They're now 2-3 on the season and 1-1 in conference. Shout out to Coach Vincent Dancy over at Mississippi Valley. He's doing an amazing job there. And if you're Bethune-Cookman, now you're sitting at 0-6. Now you have some question marks. Does Bethune-Cookman go over for the season and the first inaugural season in the Southwestern Athletic Conference? Because those opportunities for wins, nothing's guaranteed. And one thing about Bethune-Cookman, it seems like they play up or down to the level of their competition, and that's not good because it's not resulting in any wins for them. So, shout out to Mississippi Valley for getting that big win by the score of 20-14. Grambling State University went on the road yesterday to face Alcorn State University in their homecoming. The G-Men were coming off a big win from last week. They beat Alabama A&M, an upset win. And we talked about this Grambling defense. They are legit. There were some issues with Grambling's football team. It would be on the offensive side of the football. The lack of the running game, the turnovers, the lack of the passing game, and so forth. The biggest question in going into the game yesterday, could Grambling's defense play well enough to keep Grambling in the football game, and could that offense capitalize on key opportunities? Well, it didn't look good early. Alcorn jumped out to a 21-6 lead. Grambling gives up 21 points in the second half, only 3 the remainder of the ball game. The Grambling defense came to play. Grambling's offense really woke up. You saw Noah Biden in that defense. Noah Biden in that offense, really get into things in the second half. And if you're Grambling, if you're a Grambling fan, you saw them use Alden Clark as well. Noah Biden with 10 of 27 for 105 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But Alden Clark, 5 of 5, 6 or 7 yards and 1 touchdown. And it's also what he did on the ground. He had 10 carries for 59 yards and had a long 33-yard rush. Noah Biden was sacked once for a loss of 17 yards. Offensively, Grambling did not look bad. They fall to Alcorn by the score of 24-20. That was an interesting ball game towards the end of it, and Grambling had an opportunity to win. If you're Grambling, the G-Men, after that loss, now you have those 2 conference losses. You're sitting at 1-2 in the conference, and now you have Texas Southern coming in this weekend for homecoming at Grambling. If you're Alcorn, mission accomplished. You're 2-0 in the conference. You're where you want to be. You are sitting, you're sharing a spot atop the Western Division with Prairie View, and you control your destiny. Alcorn, the football team that we saw that night in August, week 0, lose to North Carolina Central. That football team is back. All right, that football team is back, and they might be the class of the Western Division. There's still a lot of football left to be played, but right now, Alcorn is playing some good football. They hold off Grambling 24-20. Phoenix Harper yesterday, 15-23 for 150 yards. He threw for 2 touchdowns. He did throw the 1 interception. Nico Duffy, 20 carries for 138 yards. I think he really got it done. Had a long 65-yard run and really flipped the field late in that ball game on yesterday. Sean Anderson, 9 carries for 35 yards. And LaCharles Pringle, 4 receptions, 67 yards for 2 touchdowns. He had the long 45-yard touchdown reception early in the ball game that really set the tone. That young man is playing out of his mind. He's having an amazing season so far. So, like I said, Alcorn gets it done, 24-20. Grambling drops to 1-2 in conference. Now you got an interesting ball game next week. Grambling hosting Texas Southern, and I will break down why that game is important in just a second. Before we go there, I would like to thank Dr. Kenyatta Cavill. If you were watching earlier today, you got a chance to do his show. We were able to do some midterm grades, as well as interview FAMU head coach Willie Simmons. If you missed that, make sure that you log on to the My BCSN YouTube page. You can also do it on the My BCSN app or right here on Facebook. Make sure you check out that show. I think that you'll really like it. The midterm grades. Hey, tell us what you think that we got right, what we got wrong. We like for these shows to be interactive. We like to turn this monologue into a dialogue. But yes, we're talking about Grambling. Grambling, 1-2 in the conference. Texas Southern comes calling. Texas Southern. Southern, that ball game yesterday. Going to hop into it right after this break we have coming up. Texas Southern and Southern. That's the game next on the docket. Going to take a little pause. Make sure you got your water, your chips, whatever you do to watch me and get through it. Make sure you have that with you. Stay tuned, and I'll be right back after these messages.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Itchy, squirmy, scratchy, family not getting clean? Get Charmin Ultra Strong. Go get 'em! It just cleans better. With a diamond weave texture, your family can use less while still getting clean.
Goodbye, itchy squirm. Hello, cream bottom.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never, ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
All right, and we are back. We are back. Thank you for staying tuned in. Well, enough. We were talking about Southern and Texas Southern. Texas Southern, unique case. Coach Clarence McKinney, he's been there since 2018. Texas Southern program that has not won a ball game in a couple of seasons, has not won a conference game since the end of 2017. How would Texas Southern look? They did get the win against North American University for homecoming a week ago by the score of 69-0. North American University is not a sanctioned NCAA opponent. So technically that win does not go in the record books, despite Texas Southern actually getting that win. Texas Southern comes in with some confidence, winning the ball game against Southern. Southern, the Jags hadn't been looking Jag-like, but we're sitting 2-2 in the conference. 2-2 overall, 1-0 in the conference. And what took place yesterday is that we saw Texas Southern snap their conference losing streak and their overall losing streak with a huge win over Southern University by the score of 35-31. And Texas Southern did it in dramatic fashion. They scored with less than a minute to go. Quarterback Andrew Bodie, true freshman out of Corpus Christi, Texas. He went 28 of 35 for 338 yards. And he carried the ball 16 times for 85 yards. That young man was a difference maker. Texas Southern defeating Southern for the first time since 2012. 2011. So shout out to Texas Southern, Coach Clarence McKinney. That offense with Andrew Bodie is nothing short of amazing. Texas Southern yesterday, 576 yards of total offense, 338 through the air, 238 on the ground. Texas Southern averaged 6.6 yards per carry. Wow. Amazing. If you're a Southern fan, I understand. Don't jump off the ledge just yet. The Jags are 1-1 in conference. Offensively, Southern did look good. Glendon McDaniel at quarterback, he's solid. 20 of 27 yesterday. He did throw one interception, but that was the Hail Mary attempt at the end of the ball game. Southern was able to run the ball 322 yards, average 6.1 yards per carry. Turnovers. That's what plagued the Jags. 2 turnovers yesterday, a fumble and an interception. The fumble more so than the interception hurt because that fumble happened in the red zone. 2 missed field goals, which were proved to be costly. And defensively, we're talking about a Southern University defense with Jalen Ivey, with Jordan Lewis, the reigning Buck Buchanan Award winner for the FCS National Defensive Player of the Year. This defense hasn't looked like the defense that we've seen in the spring. Those players seem to not be playing to their talent level. Once again, 576 yards, Texas Southern. You saw the way that Mississippi Valley was able to move the ball against them. McNeese State was able to move the ball at times. Miles College, and so forth. A lot of questions surrounding Southern. Southern will go on the road this weekend to play Arkansas Pine Bluff. It's homecoming for the Golden Lions, and they need a win badly. That's 2 programs that desperately need wins, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Southern University. Both of them were expected to be in the middle dead heat in the Western Division race. A loss here for either pretty much knock them out. I think for Arkansas Pine Bluff, they may be done. They're 0-3 in the conference. Southern, you cannot afford a second conference loss. So that game is going to be crucial for both of those programs. If you remember in the spring, Arkansas Pine Bluff went on the road to Southern, defeated the Jags at Montford Stadium during the spring, and then Arkansas Pine Bluff felt a little bit disrespected. A lot of people felt like Arkansas Pine Bluff at the end of the year was not the best team in the Western Division. A lot of people thought that was Southern. So Arkansas Pine Bluff had a little chip on the shoulder. Southern was predicted to finish higher than Arkansas Pine Bluff in all of the preseason rankings during SWAC Media Day. Hey, a little chip on the shoulder. We'll see what happens in that ball game. But I think if you're Arkansas Pine Bluff, you need this win because what you don't need is the bottom to fall out. And if you're Southern, you need this win because you need to stay in the thick of the Western Division race. And if you're Southern, the meaty part of your schedule is on the way. Prairie View comes up in a week. Alcorn comes up after that. FAMU comes up after that. Jackson State comes up after that. I know. The schedule sounds like something you would put together in NCAA football. It's a real schedule. Southern has some tough ball games coming. You need to start. You got to go into that stretch with some positive momentum. Get a win and head into Prairie View for homecoming. Now, we recapped the games in conference, and some of the questions I got was, "Hey, what's wrong with Alabama A&M? Did you see what Jackson State did to Alabama A&M?" I actually went in today to try to look at some of that ball game, and the problems for Alabama A&M are the same. The same problems that they had against South Carolina State are the same problems that they have today. That Alabama A&M defense is not good. I don't know of a fancy word or fancy way to put that. It's not a pleasant way to put that. Defensively, Alabama A&M is not good. They're not particularly good on either line of scrimmage, offensive line or defensive line. They could not run the ball at all yesterday against Jackson State. It was like running against a brick wall. Same thing with Grambling. That offensive line and defensive line, that's the Achilles heel. The old adage is that football games are won up front with the offensive line and defensive line. I know we live in a modern society where we have spread offenses and quarterbacks and receivers and all these things, and that is great. None of that means anything if your quarterback can't stand upright to get the balls to those receivers. All that stuff is cute. It makes great headlines on signing day. But Alabama A&M yesterday got thrown into a lion's den, and they didn't have the machinery to fight the lion off. Jackson State, dominant defensive front. That front seven is nothing short of amazing. The offensive line couldn't do anything with them. Jackson State's offensive line, a work in progress. Alabama A&M's defensive line, mismatch. Jackson State blew them off the ball and was able to do whatever they wanted to do offensively. You saw a Jackson State offense that couldn't run the ball against anyone suddenly run for days against Alabama A&M. If you're Alabama A&M, you got Florida A&M coming. That's another dominant defense, another dominant front seven. That you got to bow up. You got to bow up, or if not, FAMU will do something similar to what Jackson State did. Defensively, I don't know if you can fix it, but it has to get better. That side of football is bad. Let's just put it like that. It's bad. For Jackson State, you're sitting pretty. Undefeated in the conference, getting ready to hit that stretch run. You got Alabama State coming. That is a very, very important game. Because what you don't want to do is drop one, and now you're in the position where you have to go perfect. FAMU is waiting in the weeds. Jackson State has to lose two for FAMU to get back in it. Jackson State can slam the door on FAMU by just keep winning. But a loss, and you kind of open that door up, especially with Southern, Alcorn at the end of that schedule. So that game is going to be very, very important for Grambling. You get the loss at Alcorn. You have the loss against Prairie View. Big win against Alabama A&M. What you don't need is a third loss. This Texas Southern football team, offensively, amazing. They can do things with the football. They can run it. Bodie and those receivers, they're magical. Defensively, whereas where kind of Texas Southern has some issues. That's what Texas Southern has a few issues. Grambling's offense has had some issues. So it's going to be kind of weakness versus a weakness. And then strength on strength. Texas Southern's offense, Grambling's defense. That game is going to be key. If you're Texas Southern, you got that one win, keep the wins coming. Coach Clarence McKinney, he said that this is a different Texas Southern. This is a different TSU. We'll be able to see that on Saturday. And other places in the conference, we talked about Alabama State visiting Jackson State. We talked about FAMU visiting Alabama A&M. We got a couple other games in conference as well. Hold up. Technical difficulty, bear with me. Anyway, we got a couple other games in the conference as well. One interesting ball game next week. Alcorn State. They go on the road to Mississippi Valley. Interesting ball game. Got out Mississippi Valley at 2-3. Alcorn has a 3-2 overall record, but Mississippi Valley, talk about a football team that's believing. You get Alcorn to come into your house. That's going to be an interesting ball game. Prairie View takes the long trip from Texas, the Daytona Beach, to face off against Bethune-Cookman. Long trip. Let's see what Prairie View does there. Prairie View sitting pretty in the top of the Western standings along with Alcorn. Does the winless team of Bethune-Cookman jump up and bite them? It's going to be an interesting game down there in Daytona. We already talked about Southern and Arkansas Pine Bluff, Florida A&M, as well, visiting Alabama A&M. Remember on next week, one of the things about the Southwestern Athletic Conference, television. Television, if you have the ESPN app, the ESPN family of networks, 3 of those contests will be there. Florida A&M and Alabama A&M on ESPN Plus. That game will kick off at 2 o'clock Eastern. You got Alabama State at Jackson State, ESPN Plus. That game will kick off at 3 o'clock Eastern. And then Southern at Arkansas Pine Bluff on ESPN Plus. That game will also kick off at 3 p.m. Eastern. Mississippi Valley at Alcorn State. You might want to check with both of those schools' websites. Usually you can get streaming. I know at Alcorn they have a streaming service. You might want to check with Mississippi Valley as well. And then Prairie View and Bethune-Cookman. That game, later game, that one will kick off at 4 Eastern. Now, we go to the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. We started talking about the Celebration Bowl and how the outlook, everything looks. Howard got an impressive win on Friday night, that game on the ESPN family of networks. Howard, football team that had some success a few years ago, back in 2018. Coach Ron Prince comes in, program kind of, new coach, new staff, new attitude. Howard gets the win over Morgan State, who was winless, 27-0. And it was the way that Howard was able to get it done. They got it done defensively. That defensive unit for Howard, 0 points, barely gave up 100 total yards to Morgan State. Howard's right now sitting at 2-4. Very well could be 3-3. They had some opportunities against Hampton a couple of weeks ago, to win that ball game. But shout out to Howard. Delaware State gets the win 56-6 over Virginia Lynchburg. North Carolina Central drops another game. They dropped this one to Tennessee Tech by the score of 27-16. We talked about South Carolina State and their loss to Florida A&M by the score of 30-6. This week, over in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, you got Virginia Lynchburg, who will go on the road to face off against Norfolk State. They sit at 3-2, and they seem to be the class of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, led by head coach Dawson Odoms. Do it everything quarterback Pootie Carter as well. And then Morgan State, they go on the road to Orangeburg, South Carolina. They will face off against South Carolina State. South Carolina State 1-4 on the year. Morgan State 0-5 overall. This is the first conference game for either one of those programs. So the road for the Celebration Bowl actually starts now in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. And when you start talking about the Celebration Bowl, particularly in the MEAC, the teams are only playing 5 conference games. Those games are actually starting this week. So for this week and pretty much the rest of the season, you're going to have conference games in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference And the margin for error is so small with a 5 game sample size. One of the questions I was asked, like, who do you think are the favorite? Who do you think is the favorite over in the MEAC? I know preseason everyone was South Carolina State, South Carolina State, South Carolina State, and the Bulldogs still may be the team to beat. But the team that's playing the best in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference is a team led by former Southern University head coach Dawson Odom, and that's the Norfolk State Spartans. They're currently sitting at 3-2. The quarterback, Pooty Carter, preseason offensive player of the year in the MEAC, has been nothing short of amazing. You saw the epic win that they had against Hampton a week ago. They get Virginia Lynchburg. They'll jump to 4-2 after that, and then they'll get into conference play. It's going to be an interesting season. But I think that if I were a betting man, which I am not, I like Norfolk State to get it done over in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. And could you imagine, just imagine for a little bit, Southern's not having the season that they want to have. Could you imagine the chirping, the conversation, the temperature of the room? If Southern doesn't bounce back, has a bad season, and their former coach goes to Norfolk and in year one goes to a Celebration Bowl. Not a whistler, but could you imagine the conversations that are being had in the 225 area code? Just something to think about. We got a lot of football that's left to be played before we get to that particular point. But that's something to talk about. South Carolina State, season has started off a little bit rough for the Bulldogs. Not a little bit rough, but rough. They're starting 1-4. They had a game against Alabama A&M that they very well could have won, didn't. Their one win, Bethune-Cookman, they looked amazing for 3 quarters. The fourth quarter a week ago, they looked bad. And then you go on the road to Florida A&M, a non-conference game, and get boat raced. So we don't know who's the real South Carolina State. They will know in a couple of weeks once they get into conference play. In the Southwestern Athletic Conference, Jackson State currently sits atop the SWAC Eastern Division. They have a 2-0 record in conference. Alabama State sits right there behind them with a record of 2-1. And then you got the 1-1s, Florida A&M at 1-1, Mississippi Valley at 1-1, then Alabama A&M at 1-2, and then Bethune-Cookman with an 0-3 conference record, sitting in the cellar, if you will, of the SWAC's Eastern Division. In the SWAC West, Prairie View sits atop the SWAC Western standings with a 3-0 record. Alcorn's right there with them with a 2-0 record. Texas Southern currently sits in the 3 spot with a 1-1 record in the conference. Southern right now 1-1 sits at the 4th spot. Grambling in the 5th spot at 1-2, and Arkansas Pine Bluff sitting at 0-3. Celebration Bowl. No, we don't like to talk about it this early. But just thinking about some of the intriguing matchups that we potentially could get with the Celebration Bowl. I know in the MEAC it's kind of easy to kind of say this team may be a favorite, that team may be a favorite. In football, in SWAC, there's just too many key games to be played. But in the MEAC, I told you I like Norfolk State. If it's not Norfolk, I think that you get South Carolina State. But I think that Norfolk right now is the class of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. We didn't get into a lot of SIAC games. Well, one game that I wanted to get into a little bit, Miles College and Benedict College. It was homecoming. Yes, homecoming at Miles College as well. If you were in Alabama, the state of Alabama this weekend, you had homecoming at Alabama State, Alabama A&M, and Miles College. And to throw a cherry on top, you had the Morehouse Ski Classic in Birmingham. But Miles College drops two in a row. This time they dropped to Benedict by the score of 24-21. Miles, who is the beast of the we kind of felt like that they would be the beast of the SIAC, probably the odds-on favorite to win it. They just dropped their second conference game in a row. Not a division game, still may get to the SIAC championship, but two losses to Eastern Division foes. They had Albany State a week ago, and now Benedict on this week. Benedict coming out of the Eastern Division. That football team looks a lot better under head coach Chennis Berry, a former offensive coordinator at Southern University. They're playing some good football up in Columbia, South Carolina. Also, Bowie State going on the road, the battle for the CIAA North. They beat Shawan. They limit that offense. Bowie State gets it done, and they seem to be the class of the CIAA Northern Division. It looks like Bowie State and Fayetteville State may be on a collision towards each other in the CIAA championship game in about a month. We'll kind of see what happens there. Fayetteville State gets it done over Shaw yesterday by the score of 15-13. And that was a crucial hard knock old school football game. Fayetteville State found a way to get it done. They knocked off Shaw, who was surging, and shout out to Fayetteville State. A lot of people like Shaw in that ball game, but Fayetteville State really came to play and got the win. North Carolina A&T started off hot on yesterday. They faced North Alabama. They hold on to win 38-34, but at one point this was a 38-14 ball game. North Carolina A&T had this game in hand, and they let North Alabama back in the ball game. North Alabama currently winless on the year. Have not had their opportunities right there at the end. North Carolina A&T slams the door shut. They get it done. North Carolina A&T, crucial game in the Big South coming up on this week, as they will face off against the Owls of Kennesaw State, one of the perennial powers in the Big South. A key to the playoffs, the LCS playoffs, you don't get one of those without beating Kennesaw State and Monmouth. And A&T has both of those schools here during the month of October. Monmouth coming up a little bit later this month for homecoming, G-Ho, if you will. So it's going to be interesting. Tennessee State, of course, had the day off. Hampton faced off against aforementioned Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State gets the win over Hampton yesterday by a score of 38-15. Hampton did play well in the early goings of this ball game, but at the end it was too much Kennesaw State. They roll along, and Hampton now has another loss. They dropped to 2-3 overall. That was Hampton's first conference game. They dropped down to 0-1. The big thing about the Big South, if you're looking at it right now, Campbell, North Carolina A&T, Monmouth, and Kennesaw State are all unbeaten in conference. Campbell, North Carolina A&T, and Monmouth are sitting at 2-0, and Kennesaw State currently sitting at 1-0. Interesting to see if the Aggies can get in position to not only win the Big South, but if not win the Big South, at least get an at-large playoff bid. We'll see how things shake out there in the Big South, and keep an eye on the Aggies during their inaugural season, coming over from the MEAC to the Big South. That's almost my time for tonight. Next week, buckle up. We're going to have fun with it. We're bringing back the guest on next week. thank you. I appreciate you guys for the feedback. A lot of you guys like PJ Howard. I'm going to try my best to get PJ back sometime this season. Outstanding guy down there at Alabama State University. Next week, we'll be talking about the big games, not only in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, but also in the MEAC. We'll talk a little bit more about coaches' hot seat on next week. Coaches around HBCU football who that could be on the hot seat. We'll talk about that. We will also talk about a little bit more. I have some guests to talk about. We'll talk about Celebration Bowl predictions. We had to predict right now, way too early. Who would be the teams that you think were going to close it out strong and end up in Atlanta for the Celebration Bowl? So we got all of that coming on next week, and we'll review the games that will be. We'll talk about what happens with Alabama State, Jackson State, Florida A&M, and Alabama A&M, Southern and Arkansas Pine Bluff, Prairie View and Bethune-Cookman, and so many more. So looking forward to it next week. Shout out to Roy back in the studio making it happen. And shout out to all of you guys for your support of the Black College Sports Network. We got some great things happening right here on this channel. Great guys, great talent. And we got some great information coming for you. If you're a lover of HBCU sports, it doesn't matter what it is, football, baseball, basketball, doesn't matter. We got you covered right here at the Black College Sports Network. So make sure that you're tuning in. You know how to tune in. Make sure you download the My BCSN app. You may miss live recordings such as this one, but when you got that app, man, you can drive around in the car, go to the app, man, and you can listen. You don't have to look at my ugly mug. All right, I got the face for radio. But seriously, man, we thank each and every one of you guys for coming out and support. Next week, we're doing it big, bringing back the guesting, get the full show. You guys could have been anywhere in the world, but you would decided to be here with me, and I appreciate that. That's my time. I'm BJ Jones signing off, and I'll catch you guys next week.